Our second guest is Mr. Angel Torres, and he is joining us through Zoom. Angel Torres was born in Mexico, but he came to the US at a young age. He was raised in Brighton, Colorado, and for about 15 years he worked in different agricultural places in that town, as well as with his own family farm, at the farm, alongside with his mom and his dad. In May 2017, he graduated from high school and he moved to Grand Junction, where he attended Colorado Mesa University. And he graduated from CMU with a degree in social work. Since then, he has been working with the Migrant Education School District 51, and he is a case manager for the Migrant Education Program, West Central Region. But he is with us today not to talk about his job or his position as a case manager for migrant families, but instead he is joining us today to share with us some of his experiences with a specific case that occurred this summer, 2023, in Brighton, Colorado, and it's a case of wage theft. So the question that we would like to ask you is if you could tell us more about that situation in particular and what your involvement in it was.
Hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much again for inviting me today. I'm so sorry I couldn't be there in person. And thank you again. Yes, before I begin, disclaimer, I do work for a migrant education program, but this case that I'm about to present isn't affiliated with them in any way, with any of the participant colleagues from our region, from the state, from the federal level. This was done on my own time, my own prerogative, and with my own resources, but it's still something important to address and to talk about. So I'll just do a quick rundown of the situation that happened in Brighton, Colorado, kind of a bit of a timeline and a little bit of what I know now, after most of it has been settled. There's still a lot going on with it, but there was a lot that happened between the summer and now. So this all happened when I overheard a conversation. I went to visit my folks in Brighton in early July, or in June, sorry. And I overheard my uncle asking my mom if he could borrow a few $100s from her. And he had mentioned something that really took note. He said that they hadn't gotten paid in 3 weeks. And so I thought that was, it wasn't too odd, because unfortunately that's a common practice with workers and H-2A workers, the farm owners and the H-2A workers. Sometimes they get behind on payments and then they pay more of a lump sum towards the end. But I still felt like I needed to do something, so I reached out to a few people. I didn't put too much effort into it because I thought it would be resolved. I thought, he'll pay him next week and stuff like that. And then I did report it to a few other organizations, one of them being the Human and Labor Trafficking Hotline here in Colorado, just because after talking to him and getting more details, I was like, there's a lot of things going on. There's workplace harassment, there's the wage theft, and it's just, there was a lot of policies and violations that I was hearing that didn't sit right with me. But I left it as is, and I didn't hear anything back or know much about the situation until late July. I got a phone call from an unknown number, and when I answered it, it was actually a different agricultural worker, a different H-2A worker that worked on this same farm with my uncle. And he was telling me that, he knows that I'm a social worker and that I was helping others with the whole wage stuff. And they were telling me that now they haven't been getting paid in over 7 weeks. And so I'm like, okay, this is definitely something that needs more attention. I needed to really put, manos en la masa, as they say, or really put a lot of time and effort into this. as much as I could. And I got in contact with Tom, and he got me in contact with a few other people, one of them being Towards Justice, and they deal with class action lawsuits. I know the work that they've done, especially with the sheep herders and all that stuff. And we got him in contact with Towards Justice, as well as Colorado Legal Services, specifically their farm worker division. I also contacted the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. In Colorado, it's law. It's like if you work in Colorado with status, without status, on a visa, whatever, if you worked, you need to get paid. And it's basically what they told me. They were going to send some investigators to go check out what was happening at this farm. So essentially around August 11th, or let me see. Yeah, around that time, I had gone back and forth to Brighton a few times, not only for personal reasons, but for this case. And one of the workers brought me a letter, and the letter had said that the farm was filing for Chapter 12 bankruptcy. And mind you, the letter was given to these workers not in their native language, it was in English. And so they had reached out to not only myself, but other people that they knew that spoke English and who read English, and to get a better understanding of like what's going on, because in their mind they were like, oh, we're not getting paid. They left us in the dust. So I talked to them. There's a whole proceeding that they have to go through and stuff like that. And around this same time, the workers that I was working with, who I got that unknown phone call from, I was trying my hardest to convince them to stay, to kind of ease their suffering per se. But they were scared. They were understandably scared, and they didn't want to be on bad terms. And more than anything, they wanted to get paid. They didn't want to just wait around and just see where things follow. So unfortunately, there was a big group of that H2A group that left the state of Colorado. And to this day, I unfortunately don't know where they're at. So that's something that I want to share with you all, that's what happens. Sometimes desperation settles in and the workers leave. There was still another group of workers who decided to stick it out. They got some financial resources. They were able to get somewhat situated, at least financially, so they could stay. And on August 21st was the hearing for the Chapter 12 bankruptcy. And mind you, all this was under oath. All this was right there in front of the trustee, the judge who proceeded over this case of Chapter 12 bankruptcy. And during that proceeding, we learned a lot more information of what happened with the farm's finances. And essentially, not only were they not paying the workers, they were like 2 to 3 months behind on the workers' rent. They were behind on a lot of different things. They were behind from like previous lawsuits that they were filed against. And it's ridiculous. It's like what was happening, all that information that came out just spewed all over, and it was so much to take in. And I had asked, there was an opportunity towards the end of the hearing where we were able to ask some questions. And I knew that some of the workers had left. I knew that the workers had decided to leave. They're no longer in the state. They're no longer working for this guy. And I had asked the farm owner, I'm like, do you know where your workers are at? Do you know if they're still working, presenting themselves to work? Are they present still here with you in Colorado? And him under oath said that they were. So clearly, I know what I know. He thinks he knows what he knows, and that's how we proceeded on. There was a second hearing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend. But from what I understand, one of the representatives from Colorado Legal Services was there, as well as Towards Justice, continuing on with this case. And then, I'm not sure if any of you had seen it, but on September 19th, the Denver Post published an article, and it made it to the front page. And this is what it said. The title read, "This Colorado farm has repeatedly violated federal labor laws. Why does the US continue to grant it foreign workers?" And that absolutely spread like wildfire. Everyone was reading it, local farms were reading it, and they were just putting more scrutiny and more eyes on this farm, which the name of this farm is Star Farms in Brighton, Colorado. They operate in Brighton, but they operate also in the northern part of Colorado. The owner of this farm is Angela Palumbo, And the Denver Post did a whole article about it with Torts Justice, with Colorado Legal Services. And that's kind of where we're at today. A little bit after the article came out, there was a lot of back and forth between Palombo and his side and his attorneys and CLS, Colorado Legal Services, and Torts Justice, sort of the back and forth. I can say with all this pressure from the press, from all this pressure from the public, Safeway, the corporation, the grocery store corporation, has actually cut ties with Palombo and Star Farms. So they're no longer continuing business with him. And from what I know, at least from the group that still stayed, stick it out to get paid, they have finally gotten paid. And although that's great and that's excellent, and this is definitely what we wanted, it opens a bigger question to the H-2A process, the vulnerability of this population when they're in the U.S., and just the craziness of it all, really in regards to who can just ask of any person to come over and have them work, essentially for nothing, basically slavery at one point. So that's what I have at the moment. That's what I know at the moment. There's a few things coming in here and there, but that's for the gist of it, for most of it.
Thank you so much for that explanation and all the details you gave us. Actually, you answered my second question already, so I'm going to go on with our third guest. This is Mr. David Harold. He is a farmer and the proud owner of Tuxedo Corn. And he is one of the farmers in the region who works with non-immigrants, H-2A visa holders. So I'd like to hear more about what is your experience with these workers, and how vital is this program for farmers here in the U.S., but more specifically here in Colorado.
Tough to listen. I not by name, but am by the system maybe portrayed as the bad guy, following the last two people who've spoken to you. So it's hard to hear those stories. It's hard to hear those perspectives. I hope I offer a different perspective. That's my goal. I use the H-2A program and employ this year about 150 H-2A workers, as well as some domestic workers from the area. The program is set up in a way to ensure farm labor for U.S. farmers, but in a way that protects U.S. workers, so that I'm not going and looking for inexpensive foreign labor. I'm required to fulfill a lot of steps that prove that I am looking for or able to hire local domestic U.S. workers before I'm allowed to bring in visa workers. It's set up with a system of laws and regulations that are supposed to protect workers from the treatment that you've heard about. My father is really the owner of Tuxedo Corn. I'm the son. But we've worked hard to do things right, follow the law, follow the regulations, and also be compassionate and do things that give dignity and respect to our workers. Without the H2A program, our ability to operate, we grow vegetables and it's labor intensive, weeding, picking, etc., as our most food crops, vegetables. So without that labor pool, the H2A program, we would not likely be the size or even exist. Let's see here, 2021, Senate Bill 87, Farm Worker Bill of Rights, was a very difficult situation. So we heard stories like what you've heard tonight, saying all these bad things about agricultural producers and mistreatment of workers. And it became evident to me throughout that process that there are bad apples, there are bad people out there, and they've given a bad name to our industry. And as much as I tried to talk about the good things and the way we did things on our farm, it seemed to fall on deaf ears. So I had been looking into joining the Fair Food Program, which is a worker-driven social responsibility program. And the idea was, I need to have a program in place that backs up my labor practices, so that I'm not telling people that I'm a good boss, but that my workers are endorsing me as a good boss. And so we did a lot of research, a lot of thinking, investigating, and joined the Fair Food Program last season, and went through their audit process and got all of our things fixed that they asked us to do, or most of them, and had in place a process to get other things done. And we went through, I guess you could call them growing pains, but went through 2 audits now. We had another one this year, and the hope is that we can show a different side of the H2A program than what you've seen. We value our workers. They rely on us for their vast majority of their income. Wages here are obviously quite a bit more than they are in Mexico. Nonetheless, there is a lot of tension in our food system. So it becomes very difficult for me to sit here and just blankly say everything is great and we treat our workers perfectly and everybody is happy. So it's an interesting time in social media. The ability for information and stories to be told. And there are good ones and bad ones, and the bad ones are a lot easier to distribute and hear for some reason. But we're trying, I'm trying to do a good job by my labor, by my consumer, my community, and hopefully provide a good, healthy environment, to grow food for people.
Thank you so much for that. You already mentioned the food fair project. And I'd like to know if you can tell us a bit more about that, and if you have seen an impact in your business, or what type of impact in terms of production and commercialization of the products you'd like to see in that relationship.
Yeah, we've definitely seen an impact by joining the Fair Food Program. The program, to understand how it works, is my workers are encouraged to participate in discussions about workplace conditions. You could call it complaining. Complain, please complain. If there's something you don't like, complain. Ideally, it's a little more productive than just like my kids complaining about everything. But the idea is that the responsibility is not solely mine, but in cooperation with the workers to improve and make working conditions on the farm acceptable. Obviously, costs are involved and markets are involved, and it gets complicated quickly. But the idea is to get fair food certification, that I, as the employer, will abide by a code of conduct. If I sell to a fair food participating buyer, there is a premium paid that goes to the worker. And so it's a incentivized system. For me, from my perspective, the idea again was to have this kind of badge of honor saying my employees say I'm a good employer, so that people who buy produce from me know that. After 2 audits, we've got a long list of things to do. Nothing terrible, nothing outrageous, but we've definitely seen an increase in complaints, which are annoying, but give us an opportunity to better things, to work with our workers and try and figure out where there are misunderstandings, where we're falling short of what our requirements are, and hopefully over time we'll improve things, and the complaints will not end, but that we will continually get better. Unfortunately, I think productivity has fallen. We've had extenuating circumstances this year with our worm issue in the sweet corn. It was a really rough year on us, and it makes it hard to measure things. But I think one of the things that we are going to struggle with is maintaining profitability in light of all the risks that we face as farmers. So we've got insect issues, we've got climate issues, we've got market forces, we've got consolidation in our food supply chain, meaning less buyers for me, less competition, and that's going to make it harder for us to survive. And then I've decided to kind of work in this realm of how do you want to say it? Really concentrating on making sure that we're doing the right thing, and that goes beyond the Fair Food Program. That goes up to use of water and soil health and pesticides, and I can see it's going to be challenging, which is I like that. That's why I'm a farmer, but sometimes it's hard to stay positive.